It's that time of the year again! As you probably all know, I usually rank my favorite games from the previous year every time on this channel, but I decided because the last video took a big toll on me, I want to go with a simpler approach. Just do a non-scripted, candid video in which I talk about my favorite games from, well, 2024 in this particular case. To be honest, the majority of last year I played games from 2023. So I couldn't play everything that came out, like Black Myth Wukong or Metaphor Refantasio. So these right here are the games that I actually saw to the credits. Technically I beat 11 games that came out in 2024, but let's say right now I didn't like Hellblade 2. At all. So here are my top 10 games for 2024. First up at number 10 we have Contra Operation Galuga. I admittedly am not the biggest Contra fan. The first game of the series that I've ever bought was Contra Hardcore, which reminds me, by the way, why do you say hardcore? It literally spells C-O-R-P-S. It's corpse. English is weird, but nevertheless, I saw a lot of people talk about Operation Galuga and decided to give it a chance, and yeah, it's really fun. Not only did you get 4-player multiplayer, which is, you know, great already, but it just plays like a classic Contra game that's very fun and fast-paced with a lot of modern enhancements that I really enjoyed. My favorite part is whenever you collect a weapon, you can actually sacrifice that weapon to use a special attack, like create a shield around you or a barrage of missiles and stuff like that, so it becomes a lot more tactical, which I really appreciate, because I think one of the things that's kind of problematic about Contra is that every time there's a weapon drop, everyone goes for the spreader. I know that's the best weapon in the game, you know, just have a weapon that pretty much, like, has projectiles all over the screen. But it makes the other weapons obsolete, which I'm glad that in Galuga, when you collect one of those weapons, even if you don't like using it, you can just sacrifice that weapon and just use it as a power attack, which is incredibly useful. If I have to name any negatives, maybe the story is a little bit ho-hum. Like, I beat this game twice and I just don't remember anything from it. I only remember that Steve Bloom is, like, I believe Bill, and I know Kira Buckland is in this game, so that's a big plus, but I don't remember anything from this game, quite frankly. As I mentioned earlier, I haven't played a whole lot of stuff that came out for 2024. And usually if I would play a lot of things, this kind of game probably wouldn't make it necessarily. But nevertheless, if you like retro games, and you have friends that also dig retro games, Contra is really fun, especially since it's much more forgiving than any of those previous games that you don't really need to use a 30 life code. As a matter of fact, you can actually buy extra life or get some more health, which makes this game much more manageable for someone like me who doesn't have the time of day to, like, play a game multiple times, like 700 hours a day. And yes, I know how many hours in a day, but you get what I'm saying. I still recommend this game, so if you like retro games, Operation Galuga comes with a recommendation. Next up, we have RZ, the Jewel of Faramore. If I was a game exec and I had someone come into my office, pitch a brand new game idea, and say, what if we took those awful Zelda CDI games and basically make them again for modern consoles? I would say get out of my office right now. But those cheeky bastards from CDI, literally the company's name is literally called CDI Software. It's spelled like that. They done it. They literally made a Faces of Evil or Wand of Gamelon game in 2024, which is insane. And the best part is, obviously being in this video, this game is pretty good. I'm actually surprised of how much I enjoyed it. It's essentially, what if you had one of those older games, but when you press a button you jump as opposed to press up on the D-pad, which is all the major improvement right there, but also has better inventory system, the actual levels are well designed. I kind of like the Metroidvania aspect of this game, where there's not a whole lot of levels, but you get to revisit them sometimes if you have the right item that can take care of a block that stopped you previously. But let's be real, the gameplay is great, and I enjoyed the 4 hours I've played of this game, but the main draw are the cutscenes, and I don't think it's ever gonna be possible to capture that lightning in a bottle of those CDI quality cutscenes from 30 years ago. It's impossible. They tried, but I don't think it's ever gonna be as awkward or as stilted or as uncanny as those were. You know, especially when you have, like, characters that move around on the background, but the background never change, but they actually move in the background, which is incredibly funny and obviously intentional. But I just like the delivery of the actors. I have to give a special shout out to my good friends in My Life in Gaming, Corey and Try, for voicing characters in this game. I'll never forget, you know, Corey's, I'm gonna teach you how to move like a crow. I mean, that just delivery, just chef's kiss, 10 out of 10, no notes.
Allow me to teach you to move like a crow. Good. I must be off. There are more crows to liberate. Caw!
Honestly, you'd think this game would just be a gag or a terrible joke, but underneath that lies a very competent action-adventure game that comes off highly recommended. If you see this game on sale on, like, any digital storefront, or if you can even find the physical copy, trust me when I say this, give this game a chance, you'll be pleasantly surprised. It's one of the most unique games out there, and yeah, I recommend it.
If you ever need something special done with that little sword of yours, just drop by and I'll give it a shellacking.
Well, this is kind of awkward. The next game I actually don't have a physical copy of, but nevertheless, at number 8 we have Thank Goodness You're Here. And I'm serious, I'm so thankful you're watching my videos. You know, I've been on this YouTube thing for like 13 years, and it's been very frustrating just to get the videos done and editing and doing all the lines and stuff. I've always been more of a gameplay person as a story person. I usually prefer, you know, a game to captivate me from like a moment-to-moment gameplay, and that's how I get immersed. But if the story is good, even if the gameplay is simplistic, I can still have fun. And yeah, I've had a lot of fun with this game. It is a very fun and unique concept. You're playing as this miniature person going around this British town and helping the different denizens with their day-to-day problems. And it sounds pretty simple, but you realize that there is a lot of goofy stuff that are abound. And, you know, I have to say that presenting humor in video games is unbelievably difficult, because one of the most important foundations of comedy is timing. You need to know exactly when to deliver a joke or how long to wait for the joke to land. And when it comes to video games, it's harder because in a movie, the editor is in control of the timing, whereas with a video game, unless it's like a pre-rendered cutscene, the player is the one in the control of how the timing of the joke is going to pan out. And even though a lot of the jokes happen when you move the character around, the jokes still remain incredibly funny. And I'll give you a very good example. At the very beginning of the game, you see this guy who is basically trying to open his store. He's trying to grab the door and like lift it up, and you think to yourself, oh, what is he gonna sell? Like, what kind of a store does he own? And then you find out he's selling bricks. It's literally just the same wall where the store is, just showing more of those red bricks. And that's already pretty funny enough. But then you come back later on in the game to that same screen, and you go back to that store again, and you find out that he actually has customers. Like, literally, you see, like, people picking the bricks from the wall. And it's kind of also hard for me to talk about this game any further because, you know, obviously humor is subjective, but in order for me to convey how funny this game is, it's really a matter of you need to play it for yourself and see if you enjoy it. Frankly, if you grew up with, like, British humor like Monty Python or anything like that, you're gonna vibe with this game immediately. I mean, heck, they have Matt Berry in the cast, and while I'm not as familiar with the guy, he has such a distinct and unique voice that you can't help yourself but, like, crack a smile when you hear him. It's not a very long game, it's about a couple of hours long, but at the very least, that experience stuck in my brain, and it's one of those games that I wouldn't mind, like, a few years down the line just replaying it again for fun, or maybe watch a friend or a partner of mine try it for the first time and see how they react. Especially that ending sequence is so bonkers and bizarre. I mean, you have literally a segment in which you have to help this guy put cigarettes in fish. I can't make this stuff up. This game is insane, but I'm glad that, you know, in modern day we can have a game with such a outlandish premise, and it can not just be generally funny, but also well received and beloved by many people. If you have a chance, maybe try picking this game out, because then you'll also say, thank goodness you're here.
My beautiful baby boy. And bigger than I thought.
Father? Father?
Cream of the crop.
And at number 7, which probably should have been number 8 because it would fit better, but who cares, we have Tekken 8. And I want to give a quick disclaimer that the Tekken community right now is pretty upset with Bandai Namco for all the balancing issues in the current update of this game. And I can't really comment much on that because I've never been a big pro fighting game guy. You can't really ask me stuff about like frame data and my mind goes. So I can't really comment on like, you know, how great this game is competitively. And I'm really judging this game when I first played it before all the Season 2 changes. So with that being said, I really like Tekken 8. And I have to give credit first and foremost to the incredibly fun campaign. This is the best story mode, not in like Tekken, but probably the closest thing production value-wise to a story mode made by NetherRealm Studios. It's that good. In particular, the last few chapters are some of the most WTF hype moments I've seen in a fighting game in quite a while, and that alone is worth the price of admission. But even besides that, this game is absolutely gorgeous. It has a really good soundtrack, which again, it has to come with the territory. And I think they actually have some of the best newcomers in the series history, which every time they make a new fighting game and introduce new characters, most of them don't stick, but I think Tekken 8 actually managed to go against the grain in this particular situation. Reina has only become one of the most popular Tekken characters of all time, considering she only had one appearance so far. I like Victor a lot, like the commander of the Ravens. I mean, I gotta love his like freaking like knuckle blade weapon he has, and he's just unbelievably slick. Also introduced this new heat system, which you basically can close the gap on an opponent and keep juggling them or doing more damage, and that's a lot of the discourse with Tekken 8 is the fact that those heat attacks do just a bonkers amount of damage, essentially. And I don't think people necessarily have issues with the heat in particular. I think it's more so for just how much a heat attack can turn a tide of battle. But that being said, this is still Tekken through and through, and this is probably the most I've enjoyed the series probably since, I want to say, Tekken Tag Tournament 2, which was 13 years ago at this point. It looks amazing, it sounds great, it actually has a decent amount of single-player content, even in this little, like, quest mode where you play as a Tekken player going in arcades all over the world and facing other Tekken players, which is kind of cute. Customization is, again, very fun. I just wish they added Team Battle again. We haven't had Team Battle in forever, come on! Just give me Team Battle again, please. And at number 6 we have Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I consider myself a casual Indiana Jones fan. I really liked Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I think that Temple of Doom was a decent movie. We don't really talk about the last two. But I only saw Last Crusade this year. Funny enough, a local theater where I live actually had it showing, and I wanted to see it, and safe to say, I think it's one of the best action-adventure movies of all time. I think it's absolutely perfect. From the action, the score, and the chemistry between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery is downright sublime. So I was actually pretty hyped to play Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and I had to wait quite a bit of time to finally play it. As you can tell, I'm holding the PS5 version, because when they announced the date for the Xbox Series X version, they also announced at the same time there's going to be a PS5 version. And since I have a PlayStation 5 Pro, I might as well just wait for a little bit, because I would rather play on my PS5. And I'm glad I did, because this game is absolutely stunning. It's probably one of the most beautiful games that you can play today. They even managed to recreate the first scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark when Indy and is exploring the temple, and he grabs the idol and the boulder and everything. And when you see the side-by-side comparison between game and movie, it's pretty uncanny of how close they got the graphics down to look almost exactly like the movie. And speaking of getting things absolutely right, Troy Baker nailed young Harrison Ford's voice. And I think this is his best vocal performance in a game, probably since Joel from The Last of Us. It's insane how he manages to capture Indiana Jones, not just the voice, because a lot of people can do an impression of Harrison Ford, but he captures the cadence, the delivery, and what Harrison Ford would actually say if he were to actually voice act in that game.
That's the Earth. Throughout history, mankind has built sites of great spiritual significance. Siwa, Giza, Persepolis, Mohenjo-Daro, Sukhothai, Nazca, Machu Picchu. Now, here's the strange part. If you were to draw a line through these ancient sites around the globe, you get a perfectly aligned circle.
He basically carries a lot of this game. Him, and I also really enjoy the villains, in particular Voss, the main bad guy. He's written really well, just like a lot of the other villains from Machine Games, who also wrote the Wolfenstein games, which I also adore. But any scene that Voss has with Gantz, one of the SS soldiers there, it's just pure gold.
Und die Affengeräusche.
That scene when they're in the compound and there's the fist fight breaking up, this is how you can tell immediately that Machine Games understood the assignment. They knew how to make a proper Indiana Jones story. Arguably even better than the last two films. The thing though with this game is that while I did enjoy it, I'm also one of those people that, even going into the trailers, which a lot of people were kind of skeptical about, I was never that excited about the first-person perspective choice. I kind of get why they did it, because you are looking through the eyes of Indy, so it makes the action more intimate, especially when you do like all the hand-to-hand combat stuff. But sometimes things can get a little bit awkward, especially when it comes to platforming. And I like doing all the swinging with the whip and all that kind of stuff, but it was really hard at times to gauge my distance from where I was at compared to the ledge that I had to reach, so I found myself falling out of a time, which was kind of awkward. And speaking of the hand-to-hand combat, I felt it was just a little bit too simple for my taste. Very early in the game, you can get a power-up that essentially makes the punch's powers much stronger. It's very easy to redeem, so a lot of the foot soldiers went down after 4 punches. It's a matter of 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then they're down. But the fact the game tries to do a lot of things like hand-to-hand combat and exploration, platforming, even if one element isn't as polished as the rest, it's still good enough for what it is. As a matter of fact, I always opted to use melee as my go-to option in this game. You can use guns, I mean obviously the same company made Wolfenstein, but I rarely wanted to do it because even though Indy has used guns in the past, it didn't really feel right to me to just go guns a-blazing and shoot every bad guy in the face. It just didn't really sit right with me. What was more fun for me was literally looking for objects in the environment, like, a pan or something like that, grab it by the handle, sneak behind an enemy and just go punk and one-hit kill them. And that to me was a lot more fun. And this is kind of like where Indiana Jones and the Great Circle really excels, is all those environments that you get to explore and go to enemy hideouts and find secrets or learn about new mysteries or excavate actual archaeological areas. I know there's a lot of comparison with Uncharted, and obviously Uncharted was inspired by Indiana Jones, but it reminds me of that one chapter in Uncharted Lost Legacy where you're in this big area and you have to go to several locations to find pieces of medallion, and it was the first time in an Uncharted game that they had an open world format. So imagine that, but with an entire game functioning like that. My only issue is that even though I enjoyed the ideas here, I didn't really have fun exploring all the areas. The Vatican can be kind of closed off. Obviously you're in a city, so there's going to be a lot of buildings, and sometimes it's just kind of annoying to roam around the different streets, and the map can be kind of unclear. And the last big area you explore is Siam, which is kind of a hassle to explore because a lot of it is covered in water, so you need to have a boat to move faster, but the boat is kind of clunky to control. Most of the time I just opted to swim, and in this game you just swim unbelievably slowly, like you're literally swimming in molasses, which is very not fun. The only area I just loved is Giza in Egypt. This is an open area, and you have so many locations you get to explore, like there's a dig site, there's the Sphinx location, which is breathtaking, there's a pyramid in the distance, there's a market you can go to. To me, that is the highlight of the game. There are some blemishes to this game overall, but it has excellent storytelling, it's absolutely beautiful, the score is fantastic, the voice acting is great, it even features the late and great Tony Todd in a pretty prominent role, rest in peace. And yeah, if you like Indiana Jones, you're absolutely gonna fall in love with this game. This is essentially the Arkham City / Asylum for Indiana Jones fans. And if that doesn't sell this game alone, I don't know what will.
What you have is your stupid American cartoons. Choo-choo, choo-choo, ha 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 ha.
At number 5, we have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I've had a love-hate relationship with a lot of Final Fantasy games as of late. I admit I've been kind of harsh, most particularly to Final Fantasy XVI, which it didn't really gel well with me in particular, especially since a lot of the RPG mechanics took a backseat. Not to mention, a lot of the story beats and the plot just moved at a glacial pace. And I also had issues with Remake as well. I also thought that taking the first 5 hours of Final Fantasy VII and bloating it to a whole game was kind of a boneheaded idea, honestly. But I really liked Rebirth. I think Rebirth is the right step for that particular trilogy. The reason is because literally when you first start this game, after the first chapter, the world opens up and you have all those big, vast landscapes you get to explore, which is incredibly fun. I mean, granted, a lot of people complain about the freaking towers that you have to uncover more areas of the map, a la, you know, Ubisoft, Assassin's Creed stuff, but I don't care. As long as you get, like, a nice gameplay, like, base, I don't care how you unravel the rest of the areas. I forgot how fun the combat in FF7 Remake was, and in Rebirth it's even better, because they added some new mechanics as well, which, specifically, I really enjoyed the synergy attacks, where two characters can perform an action together that either inflicts a lot of damage on an enemy, or increases another bar in the ATB bar so more special attacks can be performed. In general, just really enjoyed this game, and like I mentioned earlier with Remake, yeah, that game is bloated, and there are some filler in Rebirth as well, but I think the writing and the character interactions to me were more fun in Rebirth, that I didn't really mind a lot of the filler stuff, even if the side quests can get grating here and there. I just want to see more of this ragtag group of heroes overcome the hardships that they have to face. And, boy, a girl Tifa, I'll never say anything bad about Tifa. If a game gives me an option to date Tifa, come on. Like, I literally waited for the PlayStation 5 Pro to come out. It can run this game much better, because I heard on original PS5 had issues running Rebirth. It's either you had really good frame rate, but the graphics were blurry, or the graphics look well, but the frame rate was cut in half. And I'm telling you, playing this game in perfect frame rate, per se, and great visuals, definitely makes everything look a lot better, especially Tifa, because when you get that beach episode, oh boy! Yeah, now I understand why everyone is loving that character so much. But what astounds me more is the amount of different activities they put in this game. They threw everything and the kitchen sink here. There are so many different mini games that I can spend a whole day just explaining what this game has, but if I have to just mention one thing, it will be Queen's Blood. I usually don't like those extra card game mini games a lot of games have tacked on, which I don't really blame the developers for putting them in, but my attention span is very limited in terms of like learning a whole rule set. But Queen's Blood not only is incredibly easy to learn, but it's some of the most fun I've actually had with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, no joke. As a matter of fact, every time I went to a new town or a new location and there were Queen's Blood players there, I literally stopped everything and challenged them for a Queen's Blood game because it's actually very tactical and engaging game to play. I really had a lot of fun playing it. That being said, not every minigame works, and a lot of the chapters just involve minigames like the beach episode. I mean, as much as I like my best girl Tifa in a bikini, that chapter is kind of slow moving. But even when the game fumbles around and doesn't quite hit the mark, I need to give full marks to Square Enix for at least trying, because even if something fails, in a few seconds there's going to be something new. Like, the game always throws something exciting towards the player, and even then you still have the core like combat to always fall on in case of all that other fluff doesn't exactly work. I cannot wait for the third chapter, and I'm pretty sure you will too once you play this. At number 4 we have Sonic X Shadow Generations, more specifically Shadow Generations, because if people can put Bowser's Fury in their best of lists, I think this counts too. And of course I have to address this up front, that yes, I know this has Sonic Generations, the game that came out in 2011, and you know, I'm actually surprised they released it again last year. I kind of thought they would wait for an anniversary, but regardless of that, this is still a well-made Sonic game. Some might argue the best 3D Sonic game of all time, but I would say that has officially usurped by the more superior Shadow experience. Who would expect that Shadow the Hedgehog, after his titular game 20 years ago, to have a game that far surpasses that installment? Shadow Generation takes everything that worked in Sonic Generation, just makes it better. One of my complaints with Sonic Generation is that modern Sonic's levels had 2D segments in them, and considering that classic Sonic's levels are pretty much entirely in 2D, it kind of cheapens the experience with modern Sonic, since I wanted to play 3D levels, kind of like in Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 and Heroes. So I think what Sega did intelligently is divide the two acts in Shadow Generations, where Act 1 is the more over-the-top 3D action, what you used through in, like, you know, those adventure games in 3D, and those are definitely the highlight of the game for sure. And even the less exciting Act 2, which are the 2D levels, can still have some pretty fun platforming in them. And Shadow has a lot of unique abilities that Sonic doesn't have. Most notably Chaos Control, where Shadow can freeze time and move on objects that are frozen in space, essentially. You also get those mysterious, eldritch-looking Doom powers that give Shadow very, odd powers, like a pair of wings, or the ability to turn into a blob and move through, like, gooey surfaces, or swing through, like, objects, which may sound weird in concept, but they really add a lot to the gameplay. Specifically, the swinging mechanic, I think, is excellent. Like, it's a cool new way to traverse, and you can either use it to either gain extra upward momentum or just jump to a further distance, which is such a clever mechanic. All the levels in this game, every Act 1 in Shadow Generations is fantastic. Some of the best Sonic action to date. I mean, I know it's Shadow, but you know what I mean by that. It even takes a level like Kingdom Valley, which is known by many people like as the worst level in Sonic 06 in Sonic's campaign, and it's now unbelievably fun. The bosses are also great to fight against. I also enjoyed the open hub world, which takes the white void of Sonic Generations and make it in 3D. So you actually have to explore this big area that doesn't really have just the levels you have to go to, but also various collectibles like music tracks or art that you can find. And it's surprisingly very engaging to traverse this area. And I would even argue it's much more pleasant to look at than any environment in Sonic Frontiers that is just bland and drab with that much to do. Admittedly, the only reason why this game isn't that much higher on the list is because it is a very short experience with only a few levels, and you can beat it in maybe a couple of hours, maybe 3. It took me 13 to finish everything 100%. But even with its limited runtime, I've had so much fun with Shadow Generations, and heck, Sonic Generation on its own is a fantastic game that every Sonic fan is gonna adore. So you combine those two and you get this fantastic package that everyone should try out, and there's no shadow of a doubt about it. At number 3, we have The Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I never thought I will see a Metroidvania Prince of Persia game, but here we are. Because I'm mostly used to the 3D action platformers like the Sense of Time trilogy, but I do know the series started as a cinematic platformer duology of the games, so it wasn't that far of a stretch. But I wasn't expecting this new venture for this franchise would work so unbelievably well. It has all of the conventions of a Metroidvania. You know, you go through different environments, and when you find a new ability that you can use, you have to backtrack to a previous location, use that particular skill that you've acquired to progress in the game and whatnot. Speaking of backtracking, one of the things that I think every Metroidvania game should do from now on, there is a way to essentially put a little pin in the environment you are, like a little reminder. So let's say if I find a ledge that I cannot reach, and I need a double jump to get there, and then I get the double jump ability later on in the game, I can look back in the pins that I've placed and see for myself, oh, this is where I need to go to use a double jump. Which might sound like a small thing, but getting lost in Metroidvania games is such a common occurrence for a lot of people that a lot of people just drop from that genre because of that reason. So this alleviates that issue so much. Combat is also incredibly fun. I am surprised with a game that has a combat system that mostly just uses one button. There are so many combo options between regular attacks, slow attacks. You can use attacks to lift enemies in the air and then lead to an aerial combo. It's surprisingly very fun, and of course you can counter and one-hit kill enemies, which is always great, especially when the camera does this trick when it moves to the side and zooms in to show how the main character takes down his enemies, which is incredibly awesome each time. Not to mention all the special moves you can do. Those look unbelievably sick every single time I get to do them. I enjoyed playing this game so much that I went far beyond just doing the regular critical path, the regular story missions. And some of those extra missions you get to do are unbelievably hard. I especially love all the platforming challenges. It really harkens back to the classic Prince of Persia games with all the death traps, like the turnstiles with the blades, and all the saw blades that are being launched at you, and having those like split-second reactions to be able to just sneak past them just at the right time. I enjoyed doing those death-defying tricks, and finally finishing a platforming challenge was incredibly satisfying. The combat challenges, not so much. Those can be a little bit too long for my taste and kind of frustrating, especially having to, say, survive 10 waves of enemies without getting hit once, which can be really frustrating if you just mess up once. But besides those small blemishes, I will say this. Prince of Persia: The Last Crown is the best Ubisoft game in 10 years. Perhaps the best one since, I would say, Rayman Legends. It does everything right when it comes to being a good Metroidvania, but also adds a lot of cool twists like the combat system. I just wish this game got more recognition, and I know it's easy to rag on Ubisoft for their, cliched open world design and everyone, made fun of them enough, but this is a gem that more people should play. Even the game that doesn't have the biggest budget in the world can be far superior to some of the most expensive games of all time. I don't know what else to say. I think I've gone long enough about this. Just play Prince of Persia: The Last Crown. You'll thank me later. And at number 2, we have Astrobot, a phenomenal platformer that a lot of people enjoyed. It even won the Game Awards last year. Every level is very well crafted. I like the fact that no gimmick in this game repeats itself, which in that sense actually reminds me a lot of Super Mario Wonder, a game I also enjoyed a lot because each level had gimmick flower that made the level change in a unique way. It kind of has a similar concept with the tools that Astro can use. Each level has a treasure chest you open up pretty close to the beginning of the level, and then you have a unique ability like boxing gloves to break things, or you can use this like rocket pack to shoot yourself forward. A lot of unique stuff. And what's great is that those gimmicks never really repeat themselves too often, maybe for like a level or two. But considering the fact this game has like about 30 levels, it's impressive how they can keep the momentum going with brand new ideas and it never gets stale. It's downright amazing. And can I just say, like, this is one of the best love letters that any system can ever get. Like, the whole PlayStation brand. This is a love letter to PlayStation right there. Which Astro's Playroom already was, but I think Playroom in particular was about the history of the PlayStation hardware. This also celebrates all the different like brands of like video game brands that have accompanied Sony throughout the year. Seeing characters like all the way from Crash Bandicoot to Helldivers is how much this game covers. I like restoring the bots, but those that are adorned with all different like gaming costumes are the best. And just seeing them act in like their own unique animations is just downright charming. The only reason why this game isn't #1 is because I sort of had this deja vu feeling with it. I've played Astro's Playroom, as I mentioned, but more importantly, I also played the VR game on the PS4, Astro's Rescue Mission. And while I haven't completed that game because at that point I got rid of my PSVR, I kind of felt like I was going through the motions again because a lot of the level gimmicks and the controls felt very similar to that game in particular. Maybe it's the reason why when I went through Astrobot, I wasn't as in love with it compared to people who played this game for the first time, or a game of its skin for the first time. Like, they haven't touched Astro's Playroom, even though it's free on your PlayStation 5. Come on, people. But because I already played it, I knew what I was getting into, so I wasn't as surprised. Granted, there are a lot of cool surprises in this game, like the many PlayStation levels, like the Uncharted one where Astros gets a mini like BB gun and shoots enemies from afar, or the God of War level when he gets a Leviathan axe, so he grows a beard like Kratos and uses the axe to like freeze enemies or objects. It's an unbelievably creative game that I really enjoyed, and maybe it was a little bit also on the easier side, so it didn't really like scratch that particular like platforming itch. Though there are some pretty tricky platforming sections towards the end of the game if you really try to get all the bots and unlock some of the hidden stuff. It can be really tricky without any checkpoints. But that being said, despite those minor nitpicks that are really minuscule in the grand scheme of things, Astrobot is a tour de force that, most importantly, is a PS5 exclusive. A lot of the PS5 exclusives make their way to Steam, so therefore owning a PS5 doesn't really feel that special anymore, which is why I keep hearing the PS5 has no games argument. Show him this game. This game is the reason to own a PS5. Astrobot is one of the best games that came out in the last few years, and if you ever want to put a giant smile on your face, this is a must-play. You gotta try this game out. Before I talk about my #1 game from 2024, I need to give a special introduction, a forward, if you will. I really am not an indie game player, as I stated before, as most of my lists are comprised of AAA titles, and I'm fully aware of that. And while there are some indie games that I enjoy, they never really reached the top spot ever. Until 2024, because my #1 game of that year is Balatro. Or Balatro, whatever you wish to call it. I call it Balatro, I'm kind of used to it at this point, but it's kind of insane to me how a simple poker roguelike game has invaded my life and consumed me completely. I was addicted to this game from the first second all the way to the platinum trophy that I got in it. And I can talk about all different mechanics, about planet cards and jokers and how they affect the gameplay, but I really want to talk about specifically for myself why this game is at the top spot. Have you ever heard of the Tetris effect? And I'm not referring to the game that came out 8 years ago, I'm talking about the actual quote-unquote condition in which even when you sleep or you do something in your life, you keep seeing blocks of Tetris falling down, you try to like fit things in your brain and stuff like that. I think I've developed a Balatro effect. That sometimes after I finish a long session of Balatro and I go to bed, I close my eyes and I keep seeing, you know, playing cards in my brain, and like every time I play a hand, I keep seeing the fire go off. It never leaves my retina. Like, it just embedded indefinitely. I think that's the sign of a game that really grabbed me hard and didn't let go. As a matter of fact, when I finished my top 20 games of 2023 video, the first game that I played, like, and that was a terrible decision, by the way, was Balatro. Like, I wanted to catch up on the 2024 games, and of course I chose the one game that's gonna make me addicted that I couldn't even touch anything else for the longest time. To the point that I thought to myself, okay, I'm just gonna finish maybe like one deck and that's it, but then I wanted more. I did the rest of the decks, and all the other stakes, and then I want to do all the challenges. And then I was like, okay, maybe if I just do all the decks, I'm done. But no, there's this thing called Completionist Plus, in which you have to finish the game with all the jokers in the gold stake, which is easier said than done. And if I'm being 100% honest, it took me about 600 hours to platinum this game, and most of it was due to me learning the game as I go. I'm gonna say something that I never expected to say. Not only that Balatro is my favorite game from 2024, it's my favorite indie game of all time. It used to be Neon White, but it definitely got dethroned by this simple yet addictive masterpiece. It is a word I don't use too often. I know the premise sounds ridiculous, like poker roguelike, but once you learn the mechanics, it just hooks you in and never lets go. I know I didn't go into a lot of detail explaining exactly why this game is so phenomenal, as there are so many creators that can put it in such a succinct way why Balatro is unbelievably addicting, but mark my words, this game is one of the best games I've ever played in my life. It quickly became one of my favorite games of all time, and my #1 game for 2024. And there you go. And if you need a little bit of a reminder here, all the games that I just talked about. I know this is a bit different than my usual format, so let me know what you thought in the comments, and also tell me what was your favorite game that came out in 2024. I cannot wait to play the games of 2025, which that's probably going to come out in 2028 most likely. But yeah, whether you've been with me from the very beginning or just recently followed, thank you so much for watching, and until the next time,